Yukon Valley is known for being without any doubt one of the most beautiful reserves in the Hunter of the Wild. And even though it doesn't have a huge variety of species, it is still a very unique map, as well as a particularly good reserve to get diamonds and rares. It has always been really good for that, but even more after the release of Revontuli Coast. I would even place it inside the top 5 best reserves to get trophies in the game. And in my opinion, the amount of animals and the amount of good spots definitely make up for the lack of species. So the goal of this video is to show you the best locations and times as well as every single hotspot map to hunt all the species on Yukon Valley. That is an interesting looking level 5. Not sure if I would call it a guaranteed troll, but it has half potential diamond rack and half troll rack. So I must say it probably doesn't have any chance to make diamond, but we cannot be completely sure until we see a score, although certainly the chance is not too high. Anyway, we found this guy in what is one of the best locations to hunt caribou in the entire map. This lake up here, as you can see, is loaded with caribou zones. It is simply a great location to hunt them at their drink time, which is from 4 to 8:30 am. It is very similar to the drink time they had before Revontuli, with the only difference that now it starts 1 hour earlier, so it's pretty much the same and still a very good time to visit this lake. Okay, I'ma drop this guy with the 454. I would like to get as close as possible, but he's attentive and unfortunately about to go alert because the wind is really bad. Apart from this area, the caribou also inhabits a bunch of different locations that make up what I'ma call the home range number 1, which is essentially the only section of the map, the only home range where you can find caribou and grizzly bear. It is also one of the 2 home ranges and perhaps the best one where it's possible to hunt moose and the always elusive red fox. That means that every single spot inhabited by caribou will also have the presence of all the species, since they are part of the same home range. He's at 93 meters, so we're just gonna wait until he gives us a perfect broadside shot. Around 85 meters, already inside the ideal range. Come on. I need him broadside and now he's alarmed. Okay. That should be enough. He went down real quick, so we probably hit a double long in the spine. I would imagine that was the case since I think I aimed just a bit too high. Let's see how big it is. Most likely a troll. 400.49, what is this? It never had a chance to make it, and I think we all can agree that this shouldn't even be a level 5, it's just too small. Anyway, this lake is certainly worth checking if you wanna find a big caribou, or a trophy of any of the 4 species that inhabit the first home range, of course at their respective drink times. And I would also suggest you to prioritize these 3 lakes up here, since they are also quite consistent, especially for moose, caribou, and bears. The next of the best locations to hunt the species present on the first home range is this part of the Swampy area located on the Brightwater region. In my experience, it has always been a very consistent location, which in fact before the major redistribution that came with Revontuli Coast, it was already a great spot for caribou and moose, with the big difference that back then it didn't have the presence of grizzly bear. Although it probably ain't as good as the spots I mentioned first, this location is definitely among the best ones inside the home range number 1. And not only to hunt drink zones, because it can also be considered one of the best areas to hunt feed zones in Yukon Valley. And actually overall this map is not bad for feed zone hunting, it has many open areas. So in case you're looking for feed zones for the species present on the first home range, here I leave you where I consider are some nice locations to hunt these animals while they are feeding. And I'm also gonna leave you all the locations to hunt another species that I could also include inside the first home range. But since it is kind of an special case that only lives in a section of this home range, I'm just gonna leave you the map here. As you can see, the Harlequin dogs are still present only along the river on the eastern side of the map, and in case you wanna hunt them with decoys, these are some spots where flocks seem to land consistently, so I would certainly recommend you to set up on these places. 213 to 262. That estimate really makes me think we're looking at a diamond bison. But the thing with the estimates is that it doesn't really matter how promising they look, at the end is completely random. I mean, in the sense that it could either score as close as possible to the bottom or as close as possible to the top estimate, depending on what is the minimum score or the max score for that certain level. Anyway, I spotted this guy in what is one of my favorite places to hunt plains bison, inside the second home range. It usually has a decent amount of bison and in some occasions a crazy amount. It will depend on your map population, but most of the times it's gonna be quite loaded. And while being this location part of the home range number 2, you can also expect to find grey wolves, moose, and red fox. And while this spot is far from being outstanding for these 3 species, or at least not as good as it is for plains bison, it is still worth checking. Okay. I'ma get close to this guy to go for a headshot with the 470. There's not a lot of cover on this area, but as long as we manage to get below 100, we should be fine. Getting closer. He's right there. 106 is still a bit too far. Not for the 470, but for the headshot. Certainly still doable, but I prefer to be just a bit closer. Let's see here. We got full cover. And this guy is pretty much at 50 meters. So we're gonna 0 for 50, and I'ma allow him to hopefully get a head-on shot. He's attentive, and now he's alert. Let's see. He is down. Potentially a diamond plains bison. Hopefully it is, because these guys like to troll me. 223.5 diamond. Luckily it made it. It ain't huge, but it's a great trophy and actually the species I like to hunt the most on Yukon Valley. Now, before we finish this video, I'ma show you what I think are the 3 best lakes inside this region. Essentially the 3 best locations to hunt plains bison and grey wolf. Mainly plains bison though, because the grey wolves are more evenly distributed across the whole home range. So although these locations are usually decent, they might not be as consistent as they are for bison. Look at the amount of bison right there. These are great locations to grind bulls, and also to look for a diamond if you wanna do some server hopping. And of course I have to say that even though these lakes are great, and definitely your best option to spot as many animals as possible, we have to consider that this area is not too bad for feed zone hunting. So these are some locations where it ain't too hard to find feed zones inside the second home range.